Good evening. This is Action News at 5. I'm Bree Walker.
And I'm Jim Lampley. Tonight, they're off and running, the candidates for California governor. One of them is already releasing a commercial that is sure to cause some talk.
Another gang shooting, another innocent victim. This time, it's a pregnant woman.
Michael Jackson's doctors finally reveal what's wrong with the singing superstar.
And Vice President Dan Quayle is attacked while getting out of a limousine.
Good evening. Campaign 90 is a whole new ball game tonight, with candidates setting their sights on November and on facing new opponents.
The race for governor promises to be the hottest contest after Dianne Feinstein won the Democratic nomination over John Van de Kamp by more than a 10% margin.
As our Patty Ecker reports, Feinstein's campaign is already in full swing.
Dianne Feinstein was mending fences, patching up differences, and smoothing balm on old wounds today. She flew to Los Angeles to appear at a Unity press conference with about as many Democrats as you could squeeze into a room. Feinstein, who ran and won without the endorsement of the party, said she was moved by John Van de Kamp's gracious concession speech last night.
You're a class act, and I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Van de Kamp downplayed his campaign attacks, saying she's the better for them.
You know, some people said this would be a bloodbath, that we would kill each other off. I think just the opposite. I think that Dianne has emerged a tougher and a stronger candidate than when she started.
Asked if he still believes she's a Republican in Democratic clothing.
The campaign's over, and and so there's nothing more to say.
2 years ago, when Lieutenant Governor Leo McCarthy ran against Pete Wilson for senator, Feinstein refused to support McCarthy in deference to her friendship with Wilson.
I regret that decision. That's fair to say, yes. I think that brothers and sisters do have fights, and I think that's a bygone. It's history. We've put it aside.
I will vigorously support her candidacy for governor of California.
In San Francisco earlier this morning, Feinstein made an effort to clearly differentiate herself from Wilson, citing what she calls her more caring domestic policy. And she took an opening shot at Wilson.
He raised $18 million to become a United States senator. He talked to the people of California and said, I want to be your senator. 3 weeks after he took the oath of office, he met with the Republican big cigars. He turned around. He said, sorry, folks, now I'm going to run for governor of the state of California. Why? For one reason, reapportionment and control of the governor's office from a political point of view.
But as she turned her sights on Wilson today, she acknowledged that the biggest tasks will be fundraising to challenge Wilson's huge war chest and convincing Democrats who have defected to return to the fold. Patty Ecker, Channel 2 Action News.
And the Republicans also hit the campaign trail running today, with Senator Pete Wilson already unveiling a television commercial.
As Ruth Ashton Taylor reports, Wilson and other Republicans are wasting no time in getting the November race underway.
It was a unity breakfast for the Republicans, who applauded their winners, the GOP nominees for state offices, led by their choice for governor, Senator Pete Wilson.
I expect that it will be a winning ticket. I think we have every prospect of besting even Ronald Reagan's almost sweep in 1966.
After saying he expects this year's candidates to take the high road in campaigning, Wilson injected a note often missing in politics.
I think they deserve a campaign that's on the issues, and incidentally one where we can have a little fun.
In that spirit, Wilson unveiled his first post-primary television ad.
Who was the former mayor who helped save San Francisco's cable cars and saw to it that the federal government transferred a hospital to that city for an AIDS center? And who was this former mayor who got funding for senior citizen housing in San Francisco? Who was this person? Pete Wilson, the former mayor of San Diego. His work in the U.S. Senate for San Francisco led another former mayor, Dianne Feinstein, to honor him for outstanding public service and write saying, "You're wonderful."
The Republicans had their reaction, and so did Dianne Feinstein this afternoon.
I wrote letters and said thank you to him and did put that appendage on the end of it. I'm glad he treasures it and keeps it. I think that's wonderful in itself.
With all the issues, Senator Wilson says he will emphasize the fact is he will be running against a woman. Will that make any difference in the way he conducts his campaign? Wilson said no, and he doesn't think that gender should be a major factor.
I don't think that I am entitled to the vote of men because I am a man. I think that I'm entitled to the vote of men and women because I'm the better candidate.
It is a coeducational campaign season, and it doesn't appear that it will have any recess. Ruth Ashton-Taylor, Channel 2 Action News.
Well, the upcoming race for state insurance commissioner may be one of the hottest in the state. Huntington Beach insurance agent Wes Bannister won on the Republican side with 28% of the vote over John Parise and Tom Scornia. The Democratic candidate for insurance commissioner will be State Senator John Garamendi. He got 35% of the vote, beating out Bill Press and Conway Collis.
What we have to do is to really use the laws that are available to rein the insurance companies in, and then work with the new governor and the legislature to put in place laws that really will develop and make 103 a reality.
So John Garamendi will be squaring off against Republican Wes Bannister.
Meanwhile, the race for Los Angeles County Supervisor in the 1st District is out of the voters' hands now, but may soon be back in the hands of the courts. Sarah Flores leads with about 38% of the vote. Gregory O'Brien is second, down at 20%. The two may be heading for a November runoff. But on Monday, a federal judge ruled the 1st District result is invalid because it does not represent Latino voters.
The people don't think it's invalid, and I don't think it's invalid, and I will deal with it when the time comes, and we will see what happens, and I will run again.
The judge says he will decide tomorrow whether to throw out the election result and order a new 1st District to be drawn up. The primary election will lead to a big change in Malibu. The home of the rich and famous will soon become the 87th city in Los Angeles County. Yesterday, Malibu residents approved the cityhood issue by a wide margin, more than 84% of the registered voters marking yes on their ballots. Last night's victory follows 2.5 years of legal battles, plus several failed attempts at cityhood. Many Malibu residents say incorporation is the only way to check unlimited growth in the beachy area.
And we will not have to go the 35 miles down to see the County Board of Supervisors any longer for our decisions.
But the fighting is not yet over. Malibu residents are still arguing over the official date for cityhood, and our Lucretia Quinn will have a full report on Malibu cityhood on Action News at 6.
Californians passed all but 2 of the many propositions on yesterday's ballot. The only losing propositions were 118 and 119, which would have curbed the state legislature's power to redraw voter districts.
The biggest measure on the ballot, Proposition 111, which doubles the state's gas tax over the next 5 years, and it was approved 52 to 48%. Proposition 108 passed with 56% of the vote. That will provide $1 billion new in mass transit bonds.
And a third transportation measure, Prop 116, authorizes almost $2 billion in bonds for local rail projects. 54% of the voters approved it. Voters also took a stand against crime, passing Proposition 115. It's designed to speed up trials and narrow the rights of defendants in criminal cases.
Let's turn our attention to the State Ethics Initiative, Prop 112, which got the nod from voters by 62 to 38%. Among other things, that bans speaking fees for legislators and limits the gifts they can receive.
All told, Jim, voters approved 7 bond measures, bond issues to raise a record $5 billion for mass transit, schools, prisons, and housing. More bonds than have ever before been approved in a single election.
Still to come on Action News, did the McMartin case prove the undoing of Ira Reiner? A look at how Arlo Smith captured the Democratic nomination for Attorney General.
Gang gunshots through an apartment window put a mother-to-be in the hospital fighting for her life.
High school students discover recycling pays off with the right moves.
Test results are in, and Michael Jackson won't be going home from the hospital for a few more days.
And in Back to the Future Part 3, the professor falls head over heels for a woman from another time and another place.
I never ever met a man like you before.
San Francisco's top prosecutor, Arlo Smith, defeated DA Ira Reiner in yesterday's primary. Now Smith must battle Republican candidate Dan Lundgren for the post of State Attorney General. Michael Connor takes a look at both campaigns.
It was hours after Arlo Smith walked triumphantly into the San Francisco Victory Party before he could really claim victory.
I want to thank all of you for all of your help
Early exit polls indicate that both candidates did well on their home ground, but Smith did a lot better in Los Angeles than Reiner did in San Francisco. This morning, Arlo Smith was all alone as he waited for a plane to Sacramento and a meeting with supporters. Smith says much of the reason he won is because people aren't happy with Ira Reiner.
There was a percentage of people Democrats all over California who perceived him as having botched the McMartin case.
Ira Reiner, while jubilant last night, was unavailable today, only issuing a statement which said in part, "I congratulate Arlo Smith for running a strong campaign. I expect him to run a strong campaign in the general election. I will support him, and I called him this morning and offered to help his campaign any way that I could." This after the Smith-Reiner race was called by some the dirtiest of the election.
You thought he was mudslinging during the campaign, and he thought you were mudslinging during the campaign, and now everyone's buddies.
Well, but basically, of course, we are in common agreement on the issues involving the Republican opponent.
The Republican opponent, Dan Lundgren, was at a Republican event today. He says he's ready to take on Smith.
We're going to talk about drugs, we're going to talk about crime, we're going to talk about gangs, we're going to talk, very importantly, about public integrity.
Like Ira Reiner, Dan Lundgren's home turf is Southern California, with more votes than the North. But Arlo Smith can now claim that is no longer an advantage for his opponent. In Los Angeles, Mike O'Connor, Channel 2 Action News.
The third man in that campaign, Ray Buckey, defendant in the McMartin preschool molestation trial, believes Ira Reiner lost the election because of recent events in the McMartin case.
In a race that he should have more than likely won if he hadn't done probably the last things he did in the McMartin case.
Which were?
Trying to plea bargain, trying to hide that fact, and then when it comes out that he did do it, trying to call the judge. So he did some really bad moves at the end, and I think that really hurt him.
As you know, is being retried on 8 molestation charges.
A state court of appeal today refused to block the release of sales records for shotguns allegedly used in the Beverly Hills murders of a husband and wife. Lyle and Eric Menendez are accused of killing their wealthy parents for money. Their attorney tried to keep the gun sale documents sealed, claiming they were related to private conversations between the brothers and their psychologist.
Meanwhile, it only took a San Fernando jury 4 hours today to convict Roland Cantos of murder, kidnapping, and rape. The 60-year-old drifter, you'll recall, lured 2 teenage girls from a Chatsworth street and into his motorhome back in 1987. He then drove the pair to a remote area where he raped them. Cantos shot the 2 girls. 1 died. 1 lived to testify against him. When the penalty phase of his trial begins, Cantos could get the death penalty. Police today found the body of 65-year-old Herbert Farley. He had been kidnapped Saturday in Ontario while collecting cans with his wife. His body was dumped in Glen Avon. Farley and his 71-year-old wife, Lula May, were attacked at a shopping center. She was killed at the scene. Their car and Farley driven off by the killers, 1 black, 1 Latin. Tonight, Ontario police are asking for public help in arresting those attackers.
A drive-by shooting with a strange twist has left 1 man dead and 3 others wounded in South Central Los Angeles. At least 10 rounds were fired at the group from a stretch limousine. It happened just before midnight in the 200 block of West 47th Place. The man killed was 19 years old. Those wounded range in age from 15 to 28 years. Police say all the survivors are gang members. No suspects have been arrested in this case. A young pregnant woman is the latest victim of gang violence tonight, hit by a bullet while standing in her kitchen. Like so many of these stories, this incident has neighbors in Inglewood more than a little scared. Chris Blatchford has a report.
8 bullet holes mark the outside of this Inglewood apartment building. One of those bullets last night ripped through this 2nd-story window. And 21-year-old Maria Garcia, 8 months pregnant, while standing in her kitchen, was hit in the chest. Neighbor Marbella Palomar calls it frightening.
I was in the room with my kids, and as soon as I heard the gunshots, I grabbed them and I hit the floor and took them to the farthest room from the house.
The building is full of children, and neighborhood parents are concerned that it might be their house that is hit next time. This was the 2nd time in 2 weeks this apartment building was strafed with bullets. Area residents say a teenage boy who lives here is involved with street gangs. That Maria Garcia was unfortunate enough to be sharing the apartment with his family. Many residents don't want to go on camera for fear of reprisal from gangs, but most share the same concerns.
No, they're amateurs. They're just shooting to kill whoever they want to get, revenge or whatever, and they could end up shooting somebody else or shooting towards our side instead of shooting the right house and the right people.
Police confirmed some gang members were seen in the neighborhood prior to the shooting, but say they have no suspects in custody. Maria Garcia was in critical condition when she was admitted here at Martin Luther King Hospital last night.
But doctors say her condition is improving and that her baby should be okay, while police say they want those responsible for shooting her in the first place. In South Central Los Angeles, Chris Blatchford, Channel 2 Action News.
Drug dealers who do business by pay telephone will soon be getting disconnected under a pilot program given the green light today by the Los Angeles City Council. This is a plan to make it tougher for the dealers to do their work. The payphones around MacArthur Park will get old-fashioned rotary dials instead of push buttons. That is so dealers can't use their beepers. And some payphones will be altered. They won't be able to receive incoming calls.
Seems so simple. When we come back, an attack on the vice president.
And high school students find recycling is most certainly the right move. Recycling is starting to catch on, and in some very interesting ways. A lot of people are learning that saving the environment can mean saving money as well.
Today, Steve Rambo's Daily Planet shows us one such enterprising approach to recycling, a means to an end that makes everyone a winner.
You are about to meet a group of terrific kids. They're smart, they're resourceful, and they're directing their energies in one of the best ways imaginable. It's cutthroat and red hot. The Griffith Junior High School Chess Club is a power to be reckoned with. If you're not sure of your pawn defense and your checkmate en passant, you better think twice before taking these chess buffs on.
This is a 7th-place trophy for the USA for an unrated team. This is a 9th-place trophy, 9th-place team in the entire country.
How do you explain that?
How to explain that? Well, it's hard work, tenacity, good environment, good coaching, and having a good school where the teachers and the students and also the administrators really support us.
And to make it even better, these young people have found a perfect way to finance their super successful club. They make money the old-fashioned way. They earn it.
We recycle a lot of classes. We put a box, we put in each colors, and then we drive down with Mr. Gasser and we separate the papers and get it weighed and everything.
And you take it to a recycling center?
Uh-huh.
So you do the whole process yourself from start to finish? You do the collection, you do the separation, and you take it to the place?
Uh-huh.
What do you get out of it? How much does it give you?
Like $60 a week.
And ready, set, go.
The chaps at Griffith Junior High sure know their chess. And they know how to make money, too. And that's because they know how to use brain power.
Chess is a thinking man's game. And you can think whether you're rich or poor, no matter what your socioeconomic class happen to be.
Okay, so they really weren't playing that fast. We sped up the tape, but they sure were a great group of kids. And while we're on the subject of recycling, a spokesperson for the Anaheim Hilton and Towers announced a recycling program today that will involve all of their solid waste. That's 400 tons of aluminum cans, glass containers, cardboard, plastic soda containers, computer paper. Officials call it a win-win situation, a savings through the reduction of their waste removal budget of $30,000 a year.
Okay, sounds like a good program.
Yeah, I'd like to save that money.
Indeed. The Vice President gets conked on the head. Details on that when we come back.
And it looks like the tax revolt begun by Howard Jarvis a decade ago may be over.
For tips on what you can do to save Mother Earth, pick up your copy of Channel 2's To Protect Our Planet brochure at your neighborhood Lucky Store and watch what happens.
Steve Rambo's in a voting mood. One day too late. Can we vote for fine weather for an upcoming weekend?
You don't even have to vote for that. This is the one chance you get a bye on voting because we're going to have good weather just the same.
Okay.
Vote or not. But you better vote election time when it comes around in November if you missed it this time because you can't say a thing about it. Let's go and take a look at the backyard temperatures. We're going to go to North Hollywood, talk to our buddy Marilyn Lee, and see what's going on out there.
It's a beautiful day in North Hollywood today. The temperature is 82 degrees with a slight breeze, and the sky is clear with not a cloud in sight. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Marilyn. We'll work on having a great evening. And now let's see what the day looked like at the Civic Center. Or basically, we're going to go down to the marina. It looks like That looks like Lou Varela. What's he doing back there? 76 was the high and 64 was the low this morning. And right now in the Southland, we can report a clear sky, a temperature of 78 degrees, humidity 52%, winds west at 15, pressure 29.90 inches of mercury. The satellite photo is not showing a lot for Southern California, but there's a lot of cloudiness headed into Northern California and a tropical storm down to the south of us. It's Boris. It's barreling to the north now, but with the counterclockwise circulation and picking up some jet stream winds out of the southwest, the moisture from this system is going to travel into southern portions of Arizona, possibly the far eastern deserts of Southern California. But right now, we're not forecasting any changes in our weather due to that, except for an occasional high cloud by Friday once this system starts to drift on out and push back into the west. So our weather's going to stay pretty much moderate over the next couple days. On the national picture, a cold front pushing through the center of the nation had heavy thunderstorms scattered with it. You can see them developing across Kansas and Missouri, moving into the Ohio Valley. But even with that large area of thunderstorms, the variety of storms there were mostly in the light range, so really not that bad. And then one more good shot of Boris. You can see it a lot better on this national picture as it's moving northward along the coast of Baja, but the moisture seems to be traveling more into southern Arizona and New Mexico, so we're not going to worry about that one too much. For tomorrow, here's our radar shot showing the heavy storms that are pushing across the center of the nation. You can see that none of them got into the orange area, so mostly moderate to light showers. Let's look at our forecast and see what's happening locally for us here in the Southland. Okay, we're looking for cloudy skies after midnight and sunny skies by noon tomorrow. Low 62, high up near 78. In the valleys, calling for some patchy fog in the morning hours to go along with your morning clouds. Then skies will turn hazy. Temperatures in the upper 70s to the low 90s. Coastal sections, morning low clouds, clear by the afternoon, 70s to upper 60s. It'll be a little windy tonight in the mountains. Tehachapi's had a wind advisory. That has now been taken down, but winds will decrease tomorrow. And in the deserts, breeze in the afternoon and sunny all day. Palmdale at 99 and Palm Springs at about 108 for tomorrow.
Okay, I like the way you vote.
Dry heat in Palm Springs.
You got it. Thanks. NASA has put out the first photograph of the solar system taken from deep space. The picture was taken by the nuclear-powered space probe Voyager. In a mosaic, Earth, Venus, Saturn, Neptune, and Jupiter appear as tiny points of light arranged around a much larger white sun. And
photographers are calling it the picture of the century.
Astronomers, of course, are elated.
Right.
We lost our copy.
We're elated to have a chance to go to Keith Olbermann in the newsroom right now and find out what's coming up in sports. Keith?
I'm elated to be here and to report a very familiar story, Jim. Coming up tonight, defending his reputation as a man who never sits around and acts rationally when the situation calls for panic, Yankees owner George Steinbrenner has fired his manager. Bucky Dent canned in Boston, the city in which he became a Yankee hero with a playoff-winning homer in '78. The new manager is named Stump Merrill. They don't have names like that in pro tennis. At the French Open, Andre Gomez and Thomas Muster advanced to the semifinals. And since the winner of the opening game of the NBA Finals, the winner of the opening game of the NBA Finals has gone on to win the series 33 of the previous 43 times, and thus the Detroit Pistons are real happy tonight. A recap of Game 1, plus still more TV sportscaster news later when it's sports time. Jim, Bree?
Okay. All right, Keith, we'll look forward to that, and we'll be right back.
You're watching Channel 2 Action News with Jim Lampley, Bree Walker, Steve Rambo Weather, and Keith Olbermann Sports. The Channel 2 Action News at 5.
California voters ended their decade-old tax revolt by approving a steep gas tax hike at the polls yesterday. This $15 billion tax increase is the largest since voters passed the Jarvis-Gann Initiative tax slashing Prop 13 in 1978. This measure, Proposition 111, doubles the state's 9 cents a gallon gasoline tax over the next 5 years. It will cost the average driver 16 cents more a day, or $58 a year. This is a specific tax for a specific need. All the money raised will go to improving the state's aging roadway system.
A fascinating result, and politicians from President Bush on down carefully watched the outcome of that vote. Now they have to decide whether this means voters are willing to pay new taxes.
Or is it not taxes in general, but just a sign that Californians are fed up with traffic jams and a decaying highway system? We have two guests tonight on Crosstalk to discuss these issues. Supervisor Ed Edelman, who supported Proposition 111.
And Tom Rodgers, an anti-tax crusader the former chairman of the Orange County Republican Central Committee. Gentlemen, welcome to Channel 2 Action News.
Mr. Rodgers, you have said something pretty startling, that this could mark the end of the Republican Party as we know it today. Now, how do you get this from the passage of Prop 111?
Well, when the Republican Party decided to support 111, which was really the farthest thing from a gasoline tax increase, it actually was the dismantling of the GAN spending limit. And when the Republican Party decided to support this, they abandoned the principles on which the party was built.
Mr. Edelman, offer your case as to why Proposition 111 was so important.
Well, I think you don't have to drive very far in L.A. County to know what it means to be tied up in congestion. We face it every day. The time that it takes a person to get to work is about 20, 30 minutes longer on the average, and some people spend many more hours or minutes in their cars. So there was a desperate need to do something about our highway, freeways, buses, transit system in general, and I think the people, wisely enough, knew that they weren't going to get these improvements without paying for it. I think the time when you think that we can get something accomplished without paying for it is long gone.
Is the revision of the spending limit from a formula based on the per capita, or to a formula based on per capita income increases as important as Mr. Rodgers says it is?
Well, I think we already had done away with the GAN limit for K through 14. So it's unfair for the rest of the social services of the state, mental health, transit, and all the other services that are desperately needed to be tied to the GAN limit. We've not done away with a limit. We've just made that limit more flexible and brought it up to date, because in California we were collecting more money than we were going to spend in the next year or so. So it didn't make sense to tax people and then not spend it when we know we have terrible needs with the homeless, terrible needs in our criminal justice system, terrible needs in our mental health system, when we know every day that our quality of life is gone downhill in the last decade in California. It's time that people woke up, and they woke up with this proposition. I think it sends a message throughout the country that people are willing to spend, pay more for taxes if they see that there's going to be a proven benefit. And this was the case with Prop 111 and 108.
That would be all well and fine as long as you're talking about specific needs. But Mr. Rodgers, you say that this has been misrepresented, that Prop 111 has been misrepresented, and that we're not talking about specifics here, but scary generalities, right?
That's exactly true. And Mr. Edelman has indicated how the deception works. The people's frustration with traffic congestion is the purpose behind 111, when actually the hidden agenda was to remove from the obligation the state had to present tax increases to the public to vote on. That is no longer there. With 111 removed the obligation to place on the ballot items relating to transportation expenditures or capital expenditures.
Well, that's not correct. Actually, the legislature and the governor by themselves could have enacted a gasoline tax. That would be for naught, because you couldn't have spent the money that you got from the gasoline tax unless you amended the GAN limit. And that was clearly set forth in the proposition. No one hid anything. It was clear what you were doing. You were increasing the gas tax, and you were also changing, not eliminating, but changing the GAN limit so you could spend the money that was raised.
Mr. Edelman, apologize for interrupting you. We've got to wrap up. I want to ask for a yes or no answer from each of you to one question. Going back to the way we led into this interview, does this in fact mean that the Proposition 13 revolution is over? The Californians are now willing to be taxed in a way that they weren't willing to be taxed before. Mr. Edelman, yes or no?
Yes, I think this is a bellwether illustration that the people, when faced with needs brought out to them, will clearly support an increase in taxes. They want to maintain the quality of life.
Mr. Rodgers?
I don't agree at all. It's the death knell of the revolution, and it's a detriment to every taxpayer in the state of California.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We really appreciate your time.
Mr. Edelman, for joining us this afternoon.
This was just an average day for Vice President Dan Quayle. At least it was until he left the GOP luncheon on Capitol Hill and walked to his limousine. A man suddenly appeared, shouted, "I have documents," then hurled a bundle of papers. The bundle bounced off the limousine, then hit Quayle on the head. He was not hurt. The man was identified as a resident of the American Virgin Islands, and he is now being held on assault charges. The reasons for his behavior have not yet been explained.
If you're just joining us, here's a recap of the top stories for Wednesday, June 6th. Dianne Feinstein makes political history, becoming the first woman to capture a major party's nomination for governor in California. She'll face Senator Pete Wilson in November. Wilson hit the campaign trail early this morning, unveiling a new TV commercial showing Feinstein praising him. And San Francisco District Attorney Arlo Smith snatches the Democratic nomination for Attorney General from Ira Reiner. Both men point to the McMartin case as a deciding factor in the turning point to the election.
This was a gray and overcast day in Europe back on June 6, 1944. The greatest invasion armada in history gathered in the English Channel. More than 6,000 ships. They carried the vanguard of 3 million American, British, Canadian, and other Allied troops. D-Day, target Normandy, the north coast of France. Forced entry into Germany's festering Europe, Fortress Europa. Thousands of men fell on this day, etching into history the names on the bloody beaches: Omaha, Utah, Sword, Juno, Gold. 1 year later, the guns fell silent, and the Third Reich had reached its end. It would last 1,000 years, Hitler had vowed. It endured a little more than a decade, and its demise began on D-Day, June 6, 1944.
Important to remember that forever. We'll be back in a moment. Stay with us.
Let's take a moment to visit Chris Conangla in the newsroom and see what's coming up on Action News at 6.
Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. Action News at 6. We'll have the following stories. New race for the state's top... so let's try this one. A local family shocked by a judgment in favor of a police officer who killed their son speaks out for the first time. Dr. Howard Torman reports on the current measles epidemic and why vaccinations alone will not take care of the problem. Plus, what did voters really say at the ballot box yesterday? Find out in our special analysis on voting patterns and their impact on the major races. With the primary scarcely over, Republican candidate for Governor Pete Wilson wastes no time unleashing his campaign against opponent Dianne Feinstein. And we'll tell you why Malibu's effort to strike out on its own is setting an example for other communities. Also, you might dive into what you might call unbearable waters. There's a little sneak of the unbearable waters. We'll be back with all the stories I just told you about and more when Action News continues at 6 o'clock. Right now, back to you guys.
All right. When we come back...
What a fluid swimmer he is,
yeah,
huh?
He sure is. Oh, we're going to stay here. Okay, of course. Keith's right here.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much.
Got some sports?
I've got an old familiar story here. Now, this is to put it in perspective. 19 New York Yankee managers ago is Ralph Houck, 1973. 19 presidents of the United States ago is Benjamin Harrison, 1889.
Did you know that Bree has never managed the Yankees yet?
That's right. You're the only one at this table. Once again, George Steinbrenner said he felt it was time for a change. Of course it was. It was Wednesday. Steinbrenner has made the 19th managerial change in his 17 years of owning the Yankees. Bucky Dent is out, and Stump Merrill is in. 8 days after the Crosstown Mets fired their manager, 10 months after Steinbrenner hired Dent, the latest change comes. The Yankees have the worst record in the majors at 18-31. The new man, Merrill, is a former Yankee coach, never played in the majors, was managing the Yankee farm team at Columbus. Wonder why they call him Stump.
It looked like a listless ball club to me in what I saw. Now, I don't know. Maybe that's the way they play. I can't tell you because I haven't seen them. But I can tell you that's not my nature. That's not my style. And hopefully, if I'm around here long enough, we can change some of those things.
And in the best timing in sports in years, this picture of Dent and Steinbrenner appeared in Sports Illustrated, the issue that came out today. By the way, Steinbrenner also made another critical move today. He fired the Yankees' bullpen catcher, the kid who warms up the pitchers. The Angels are in Kansas City, where the big news is that the glue that holds their infield together, Dick Schofield, is back in the lineup after having missed the entire season thus far with a hamstring injury. They're just getting started. At the Sky Dome, the Twins and Blue Jays with a matinee, and Greg Gagne of the Twins with a two-run homer to left field. The Twins lead 6-4. But the story of this game, again, 5 for 5 from Kirby Puckett. Second time this season the little round man has done that. He's RBI single, scores Columbia Gene Larkin. Mini leads 7-4. And your play of the day, ex-UCLA Bruin Shane Mack, is alive and well and playing nice defense for Minnesota. The victim is Fred McGriff. The Twins roll. 2 NL matinees. Kevin Mitchell's homer wins it for the Giants. First time this year the Reds have lost a series. They were swept. Also, Houston has lost 6 straight. Big day for you tennis fans who admire not just the Lendells and Agassiz, but also the Thomas Moosters and Andres Gomez's. Fourth men's seed Gomez in the far court, pounding out his baseline game against the incorrectly named Thierry Champion. He goes to the semis on Friday, facing Mooster, who won in 4 sets today in his match The other semi Friday is Agassi versus Svensson. Where he is, the champion will be a first-time Grand Slam event winner. The team, meanwhile, that has won the first game of the NBA Finals has gone on to win the title 33 of the previous 43 series. Until the last 7 minutes last night, though, it looked like the Detroit Pistons were going to be checking out that stat from its bad end. The defending champions appear to be wound up tighter than rubber bands in the opening minutes. Detroit missed their first 6 shots. The Trailblazers, though, were fast and loose, playing as if they had nothing to lose and no disadvantage on the road court.
We just have a confidence that if we play for 48 minutes, we're going to come out on top. No matter what happens at the 2-minute mark or the 25-minute mark, it's a 48-minute game.
It took nearly all of those 48 minutes for the Pistons to catch the Blazers finally. Portland building a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter. Buck Williams slams while Chuck Daly fans the Flames. But finally, Portland began to fold under the Blazers' pressure. Clyde Drexler misses, and the bad boys are in business, particularly one of them, Isaiah Thomas, who cans the three-pointer to tie it for the 4th time at 94.
I was just trying to say anything to get him going, because the emotional adrenaline was going. I was like, yeah. Just getting him pumped up, and once he's in that groove, no one can stop him. No one.
And no one did. Isaiah with a game-high 33, a one-man wrecking crew down the stretch, putting Detroit up by 2. He iced it with another three-pointer. Pistons win round 1. But to anyone who said Portland didn't belong in the same ring with Detroit, the Blazers say, forget it. Note, though, that Thomas needed 27 shots to get those 33 points.
We disappointed we lost. But now we've proven to ourselves and to anyone across the country who want to doubt the Trailblazers' ability to play, on this level, that we are contenders.
And we didn't execute like we normally would tonight, but you're going to have those type of games, and we had one tonight. You got to give Detroit credit. They played a better game. To keep everything in the right perspective, the series is 1-0.
Game 2 tomorrow, 6 o'clock here on Channel 2. Kareem and I with the post-game show thereafter. And finally, sources close to, etc., report that the feud between sportscaster Al Michaels and ABC Television has been resolved. Michaels, who had gone to arbitration in hopes of getting out of his contract with the network, has now, say those sources, signed an extension to that contract for 3 years and more money. Do you believe in Cap City's broadcasting? Yes! Sorry.
At least for today.
That's right. I apologize, Al. I'm sorry.
You don't have to apologize to him. He's having a good day today.
Famous line. I don't want to, but I did.
Loyalties are weird in this business. What can you say? Go ahead.
When will Michael Jackson be getting out of the hospital? The doctors report on that when we come back. Bree?
Then actress and mom Mary Steenburgen gets a new job title, Stunt Woman, in Back to the Future Part 3.
I'm in I just saw this, Miss
Clayton.
Pop star Michael Jackson apparently wound up in the hospital because of stress. Jackson is known for his energetic stage shows and his perfectionist approach to making records. His doctors today said all those pressures, including the death of his grandmother, piled up on Michael Jackson.
Jackson suffered a case of costochondritis, cartilage inflammation of the front part of the ribs, which can be caused by overexertion and stress and is usually extremely painful.
Jackson entered St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica 3 days ago, and doctors say he will stay there for another 2 days.
Well, if you're one of the millions who's already seen Back to the Future Part 3, you've probably noticed that a third person went along for the ride through time and space. Her name is Mary Steenburgen, actress, mom, and as entertainment reporter Steve Kometko tells us, former stunt woman.
In Back to the Future Part 3, Mary Steenburgen portrays a school teacher who trains her sights on Christopher Lloyd. Her part was physically demanding, lots of action and stunt work, something Steenburgen thrived on.
I'd always wanted to do something like this, to be in an adventure and to get to do the things that the guys usually get to do, like ride on horseback and jump around on trains and hang upside down from steaming locomotives, and it was a riot.
Mary felt very much like a female Indiana Jones. At times, she says she was having so much fun, she actually had to remind herself, hey, be careful, this is dangerous work. So it's ironic that the only time Steenburgen was injured was during a dance rehearsal with Christopher Lloyd.
While kicking up her heels, she tore a ligament in her leg.
The dancing was so much fun that when I was actually dancing, I was laughing. In fact, in every single take, they said Chris and I were both laughing our heads off throughout all of the dancing because it was so joyous and so much fun. But the second the director said cut, I'd go, oh, God, oh. So I think the motto is you're better off hanging out on upside down from a train than dancing with Chris Lloyd.
I don't care if you fire me, Herbie. It's Christmas, and I'm going to spend Christmas Eve with my kids and Jack.
Although Steenburgen has some 14 films to her credit, including One Magic Christmas, released in '86, and Parenthood, last summer's hit comedy, it was her portrayal of Linda Dumar in Melvin and Howard that earned her a Best Supporting Actress Oscar in 1980. Still, she has only recently become a hit with her own two children, Charlie and Lily, by co-starring with Michael J. Fox. In her own words, she is now cool by association.
Suddenly, they were extremely interested in my career. And they wanted to go to all the screenings, and it all, of course, had to do with Michael. On the very first day, Charlie said, well, do you think I'll ever get to see him? And at one point, I couldn't find my son, and I looked around, and there he was in a golf cart driving Michael around. Michael had given him the wheel. And all I could think of was how expensive the cargo was. The film has a lot of private, I guess, significance for me because I grew up on trains because my father worked at the railroad. And my dad died last year. So in a weird way, when I fly off into the sky on a steam engine, it's like I'm sort of saying hello to him.
In Hollywood, Steve Kometko, Channel 2 Action News.
Gutsy lady. Like
Nice,
her.
too.
Like her. That brings us to the end of Action News at 5.
And right now, Tritia Toyota and Chris Conangla standing by for Action News at 6.
And some of our top stories tonight are...
Well, the new race for the state's top job is now on.
What are voters telling lawmakers at the ballot box? We're going to have special post-election analysis.
Vaccinations are only part of the solution to the current measles epidemic. Dr. Howard Torman tells us what else is needed.
Ouch. Prepare to jump into some waters that will definitely make you feel chilly.
Max got some colorful pictures of some powerful tornadoes.
And Keith tells us about an NBA player who's played with some of the worst teams in the league until now.
That and more coming up next.
And good evening, everyone. Our top story tonight, a major development in the Menendez brothers case. A Superior Court judge has just released some documents that link the two brothers to shotguns, which may have been used in the murder of their parents. Our Chris Blatchford is standing by live now in Beverly Hills with this report. Chris?
Tricia, what I have here in my hands is called a firearms transaction record. And it is filled out by someone named Donovan Goodrow. And according to published news reports, Donovan Goodrow was a Princeton roommate of Lyle Menendez, the older Menendez brother accused of killing his parents. Now, on this form, as you can see, it says Donovan Goodrow is the man, and on the bottom here, he purchased two shotguns, two Mossberg shotguns, at a sporting goods store in San Diego, California. Now, the reason this is significant is that the prosecution is purported to claim that Lyle Menendez went in and bought these shotguns with false identification that he took from his roommate. Now, 2 weeks ago, the prosecution went to court and asked for handwriting samples of both Lyle and Eric Menendez. And this document is significant in that they want to check those handwriting samples against the handwriting on this document that is signed by Donovan Goodrow, who they think may be Lyle or Eric Menendez. Now, it will be June 8th when a judge decides whether or not those handwriting samples can be taken, and more light is shed on the significance of this document. Reporting live from Beverly Hills, Chris Blatchford, Channel 2 Action News.
All right, Chris, thank you very much. The race is on for the state's top job with the Democratic candidate now firmly in place. Dianne Feinstein won the nomination by a wide margin in yesterday's primary, getting 52% of the Democratic vote compared to 41% for John Vandekamp. Republican Pete Wilson, with no significant opposition, got 88% of the vote. And there was no significant lull in the campaign for November. Today, Wilson unveiled a new television commercial which features a letter written to him by Dianne Feinstein saying, "You're wonderful."
I think they deserve a campaign that's on the issues, and incidentally, one where we can have a little fun.
At the same time, Dianne Feinstein began to solidify her power base with a show of Democratic unity and an effort to differentiate herself from Wilson.
California is very different from Republican domestic policy. My domestic policy is the domestic policy that begins to care and do.
Feinstein told John Van de Kamp she was moved by his gracious concession, and he was there today to show his support. Feinstein admits her biggest challenge will be fundraising in order to compete with Wilson's huge war chest.
This would be a bloodbath.
And the Democrats remain united in their fight to win the state attorney general's office.
Today, the loser, Los Angeles DA Ira Reiner, promised to support the winner, San Francisco's top prosecutor Arlo Smith.
Smith beat Reiner by a 52 to 48% margin. Now, the polls indicate that each candidate did well on his home turf, but Smith did a lot better in Los Angeles than Reiner did up north. Smith says that much of the reason he won is because people are unhappy with Reiner.
There was a percentage of people Democrats all over California who perceived him as having botched the McMartin case.
Battles it out with Republican Dan Lundgren, who says that he is ready for the fight.
We're going to talk about drugs, we're going to talk about crime, we're going to talk about gangs, we're going to talk, very importantly, about public integrity.
Lundgren's home turf is Southern California, but Arlo Smith can now claim that is no longer an advantage for his opponent. And California voters often set political trends for the rest of this country, and today it appears that they have done it again.
Our Channel 2 Action News exit poll shows voters bitterly split over a tax increase, but there was widespread support for nominating a woman to run for the state's highest office.
Political editor Terry Anzer has a closer look at the numbers now.
When Dianne Feinstein asked women to help her make history, the call was heard across the so-called gender gap. The Channel 2 Action News exit poll showed men supporting Feinstein 51 to 43% over John Van de Kamp, nearly identical to the margin among women.
Maybe the gender thing was talked about so much that people just wanted to put that behind them in casting their vote and making their voting decision.
Voters told us that issues mattered more than the candidate's gender. Pro-choice women rallied around Feinstein, but abortion was only third on the list of crucial issues for Feinstein supporters. Topping the list, crime and drugs and education.
What we're seeing is sort of two issues that highlight the Feinstein campaign thrust, which was that she was both tough and caring. Tough in terms of dealing with crime, caring and compassionate in terms of dealing with education, molding young people.
Feinstein campaigned hard in L.A.'s black community. She got endorsements and a major get-out-the-vote effort from black political leaders, including Congressman Mervyn Dimely and Assembly Speaker Willie Brown. The results, blacks supported Feinstein by more than 2 to 1 over Van de Kamp, a similar edge among Hispanic voters. But talk about raising gas taxes to improve the highways, and the voters split along economic and political lines. 61% of voters making less than $15,000 a year opposed Proposition 111. Middle-income voters were divided, but 64% of those making more than $75,000 a year favored the extra 9 cents a gallon. It's a rare case of poor voters who tend to be more liberal, siding with conservatives. Liberals favored the higher tax by a wide margin, moderate split, and 59% of the conservatives just said no. And though some may see this as a signal that it's okay for politicians to talk about higher taxes again, some experts offer caution.
They're not saying in this vote, raise my taxes for anything you want to raise my taxes for.
They're certainly not. Proposition 111 turned out to be a real squeaker, passing by only a few percentage points. And it might have been defeated if more Republicans who tended to be against higher taxes had voted in this primary. Now, Dianne Feinstein will have to cross party lines as well as gender lines if she is to beat Pete Wilson in November. Our exit poll showed the Feinstein-Wilson matchup a dead heat right now among people who cast their ballots yesterday. But Chris and Tricia, obviously there will be more Republicans voting in November, and she's got her work cut out for her.
Nice job last night, Terry. Thank you for that.
Thanks.
Well, it was the third try for Malibu, and it turned out to be the charm.
Malibu residents voted overwhelmingly yesterday for cityhood. 84% of the voters voting yes, only 15% voting no. Our Lucretia Quan reports the vote was the culmination of a long and difficult battle.
Malibu has long been known for its beautiful beaches, towering cliffs, and for the rich and famous who live here and don't mind paying the property taxes. But Malibu now will also be known as the little community that had to fight for 2.5 years to get out of the grasps of a county government that didn't want to let go. Today, Malibu is free. 84% of the residents said yes to cityhood.
I feel wonderful. We're very exhilarated. We were all up very late last night until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, but it's very good news and very well worth it.
The county supervisors, who now lose control of the area and some of its tax dollars, were not quite as happy.
They have no access to come back to the county and ask for additional money.
But the battle isn't quite over. The county is still trying to delay the official date of cityhood for almost a year.
We certainly intend to win this case and think we will, since we have beaten the county every step of the way.
The new city will be a small strip of coastal land between Carrillo State Park and Topanga Canyon. In yesterday's election, 5 city council members were also chosen, including top vote-getter and probable new mayor, Walt Keller.
We have to be prepared so that on the very first meeting, we let an insurance contract for the city and hire a city manager and a city attorney, and also quarters for the city.
Tonight, the Chamber of Commerce is holding an official ceremony to hand over the keys to the city to the newly elected council members. After that, just down the beach, a huge celebration is going to be held. Then tomorrow, the serious business of city government will begin. In Malibu, Lucretia Quinn, Channel 2 Action News.
Still ahead tonight, the family of a teenager slain by a local police officer reacts to a court ruling in a wrongful death case.
You're watching Channel 2 Action News with Tritia Toyota, Chris Conangla, Maclovio Perez with weather, and Keith Olbermann Sports. The Channel 2 Action News at 6.
L.A. police believe that they have a multiple rape suspect in custody, and they are asking for help from possible rape victims who could identify his photograph. Problem is that we don't have the photograph, and we're going to try to get it for you just a little bit later. The suspect, identified as 50-year-old Edward Apodaca, he's accused of kidnapping and raping a woman in South Central L.A. on May 7th. He surrendered to police May 11th after learning that he was wanted. So if you have any more information on this, please contact the L.A. Police Department.
Yesterday, a federal jury decided that a Westminster policeman was justified in shooting and killing an unarmed 18-year-old man. Today, family members of the victim angrily denounced that verdict. Orange County correspondent Dave Lopez reports.
The Martinez family never thought the nightmare of July 15, 1988 could get any worse. The night their 18-year-old son, Frankie Martinez, was shot and killed in their backyard. But it got worse on Tuesday. That's when a federal jury ruled that Westminster police officer Stephen Phillips was justified in shooting and killing an unarmed Martinez. The jury also ruled that Martinez provoked the incident by charging after Phillips during a brawl that broke out in the backyard.
It's just that he was a police officer and that nothing else mattered. You know, it's just like saying to the world now, hey, you have a license to kill, nobody's going to tell you anything about it.
The shooting was investigated by the Orange County Grand Jury and by the District Attorney's Office, and no charges were filed on Phillips. That's when the Martinez family filed a lawsuit in federal court claiming wrongful death. During the trial, Phillips cried on the witness stand when he testified, when he told the jury how he feared for his life as Martinez charged at him with a beer bottle in hand. It was never proven that Martinez had a beer bottle in his hand, and the verdict stunned nearly everyone.
The jury felt that under the conditions, the riotous situation, and the fear that Officer Phillips genuinely felt at the time, that they put themselves in his shoes and they would have done exactly as he did, whether he had the bottle or not.
The system let down every single person of color in this community. It sends the absolute wrong kind of message to everybody in this community, that even under circumstances like this, where a young Hispanic man is shot down and killed without any provocation at all, that police officers will not be held accountable for that by a jury in Orange County.
Within the next 2 weeks, attorneys for the Martinez family will file writs in federal court asking that the judge overturn the jury verdict or order a new trial.
I have to. It's not just for my family anymore. I mean, now the community is open season for them.
From Westminster, Dave Lopez, Channel 2 Action News.
Just ahead when we come back here, Mac takes a look ahead at the weekend weather picture. We're going to find out here. He's counting off how many hot days we've had, over 100 this year.
No, we're counting off the times we didn't go to lunch together, actually. Hot days.
You didn't pay, that's why.
Now he's blaming it on me. Well, next time that Chris pays, I'll go.
Oh, just do the weather.
We've got weather. Bad subject here. All right. We have, of course, some warm weather in store for the weekend, but the big news today is that Tropical Storm Boris, that's his name, is crossing central Baja by tomorrow. Now, this is not a major hurricane. Nonetheless, it is a lot of moisture that will be moving up into the desert southwest, and we'll have to reckon with that later. Today in Southern California, temperatures on the mild side. Well, actually, below 80. I call it mild. 79 our high. 66 at Newport, where the coastal areas didn't get very warm at all. Inland, however, is a different story. 82 in Canoga Park, 106 in Palm Springs, and 75 up in the mountains. Now, here we are. Here's Boris. This is a little early for Boris. Boris shouldn't be around till late July, August, when it really gets active. And generally, as you know, all the tropical storms move to the northwest and away from our area. This one is moving north, as you can see from this satellite picture animation. It is moving northward. It's falling apart rapidly. The winds are still 30, 40 miles an hour. It is forecast to cross over central Baja, and the moisture will likely move into the desert southwest. We may get thunderstorms in Arizona, New Mexico, and possibly drifting up into the Colorado River and into our deserts. For one thing is for certain, if you're down there, it will feel very humid for the next 3 or 4 days and through the weekend, so keep that in mind. The remnants of Boris will affect the desert southwest. Today we had a little front come into the north. Rain as far south as Crescent City and Eureka, and that's about the extent of it. Meanwhile, the Midwest gets pounded again. Just another week of tornadoes in the Midwest. Low clouds all the way across to probably Riverside or Fontana in the morning, a low of 62. Morning overcast, hazy and mild at the coast tomorrow, Thursday, but sunny and warm inland, 78 our high downtown. By Friday, we're looking for more sunshine, less cloud cover in the morning hours, and temperatures around 80 degrees. In Mojave today, they had 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts over a little wind that started blowing through there. That wind should decrease after sunset, and things should be a little better by tomorrow. Pretty rough day in the deserts with the winds. And that's it from the weather.
All right, thanks, Mac.
All right, thank you, Mac. When we come back, there is more to fighting measles than just vaccines. Dr. Howard Torman tells us what else is needed.
And bye-bye Bucky Dent. George is at it again.
The measles epidemic is showing no signs of slowing down, and now public officials are calling for more money to help buy additional measles vaccines or face more sickness and death.
And health editor Dr. Howard Torman is here now with details on this story. Howard.
As of last Friday, there were 2,922 measles cases reported in L.A. County, and that's for this year alone, compared to 1,200 cases for all of 1989. The measles is largely preventable just by getting immunized with the measles vaccine, but in the near future, there may not be sufficient funds to make sure that those who really need the vaccine will get it.
Hi, Shamika. How are you? How you doing today, huh?
This is an all-too-familiar scene, a youngster with a severe case of the measles. Many preschoolers and Hispanic children are still coming down with this disease, mainly because they've never been immunized. And it's a problem that may get worse as funding for public measles immunizations fails to meet the demand.
The cost of vaccine has just been abominable. It's increased hundreds of percent in the last 10 or 12 years. And this has impacted any ability to plan or conduct population-based campaigns.
That doesn't mean Los Angeles is without measles funding. So far in 1990, the county has received $4.4 million for vaccinations. They're still promised an additional $300,000 from the state, and they're hoping to get $1.5 million more for the rest of the year. That possibly will take care of the immediate measles crisis. But what's also needed is a long-term program to ensure future vaccinations. A recently proposed state Senate bill proposes annual funding for measles totaling $4 million for immediate vaccine shortages, $5 million for second doses, and $2.8 million for public education. But if this bill fails to pass, County Supervisor Ed Edelman says,
It seems to me that we ought to have some kind of an account that is there available for this kind of an emergency where there's a public health need that you can't wait until another legislative action is taken.
Now, next Tuesday, Supervisor Edelman is calling for an emergency report from the county health department to determine what they actually need to fight the ongoing measles epidemic. Now, hopefully, this will provide the necessary information to spur on the critical measles funding.
All right, thank you, Dr. Howard Torman. Next up tonight, after 8 years in the swamplands, Buck Williams finally has a chance to shine in Portland. Keith has all the sports next.
And there he is, first swim lessons for a little guy.
Let's see, today's Wednesday. Yankees must have a new manager today.
Well, it's time for a change, as we said last hour.
Sure.
This is where I came in. Bucky Dent had managed them since last August, which means in the Yankee scheme of things, he had almost become eligible for a pension. Instead, the Yankees have fired their manager. This is a recording. Ironically, Dent was fired in Boston, where he hit his famous playoff-winning homer in '78, but the Yanks had the worst record in the majors. The new man was the manager of their top farm club, Carl Stump Merrill. So we go from Bucky to Stumpy. Next up, Dopey, Grumpy, and Sneezy. Or maybe Dickie. Shortstop Dickie Schofield back on the Angel roster tonight after having missed the entire season thus far with a hamstring injury. The Angels are in Kansas City tonight, where they are scoreless in the third inning. In the National, a thriller in San Diego. Astros are beating the Padres 2-0, one out, bottom 9. Then Joe Carter parks the game-tying 2-run homer off the infamous Mark Portugal. 2 batters later, 2 out now, and Larry Anderson gives up the game-winning bloop hit to Gary Templeton. Padres getting shut out as the bottom of the 9th begins, win 3-2. Also in the National, another Kevin Mitchell homer as the Giants swept the Reds. Whoever wins the men's title at the French Open will be claiming his first ever Grand Slam event. Andres Gomez and Thomas Muster claimed quarterfinal wins today. They will meet Friday for a spot in the finals. This is off day for the NBA Finals, off day of which, incredibly, both teams may be trying to figure out what went wrong last night. But as our Tony Hernandez reports from Auburn Hills, there is one player in this series for whom nothing at all can go wrong.
So much is said in the NBA about the chemistry of the 5 players on the floor during a game. Well, chemically speaking, Buck Williams was the perfect element needed to provide Portland with a winning potion.
It's like a match made in heaven. The missing piece to the puzzle. He was the guy we needed to reach this level. And what a super job he has done.
After years of being surrounded by mediocrity in New Jersey, Buck Williams now finds himself surrounded by the media because finally he is in the NBA Finals. And that alone has made the 30-year-old Williams feel like a kid again.
Oh, no question. I've been feeling like a kid for the last 80-some games. I feel real good about my worth here in Portland. I feel good about the players that I'm playing with. I feel good about the coaching staff, and this has been a breath of fresh air for me as far as my career.
The man mixing the ingredients for the Trailblazers is Rick Edelman, who in his first full year as head coach is thrilled the Buck stopped in Portland.
We went from 39 wins to 59. Buck was a tremendous reason for that. He solidified our starting group. We had 4 very good players starting already, and he gave us a guy who was going to be there night after night. I'm just glad when I got this job the first year that he showed up at the same time.
From Auburn Hills, Michigan, this is Tony Hernandez, Channel 2 Action News.
Finally, sports for people who don't like sports and in the, yeah, it's your fault, you department. Notice, A, that the Clippers yesterday fired their trainer, Bernie LaRue, and B, that in addition to canning Bucky Dent, Yankee owner George Steinbrenner today also fired the team's bullpen catcher, the kid who warms up the pitchers. It was all his fault.
Sure it was. He doesn't own CBS, does he? No.
Thank you, Keith. We're going to check in with Jim Lampley now. The news report. Look at what's ahead on Action News Nightcast at 11. Lamps.
Thanks, Tricia. Tonight on Action News Nightcast, we'll have more on the new evidence that could link the Menendez brothers to guns that may have killed their parents. Plus, Mike Glickman talks about the fall of his real estate empire and his plans for the future. And meet the models that make women want to buy suits and ties, the men of C&R. What a difference one nightcast makes. Those stories and much more tonight at 11.
Thank you, Jim. Finally, a swimmingly perfect debut today at the Milwaukee County Zoo. Baby polar bear finally decided to take the plunge in the zoo's giant exhibit pool. Splashed around for a little while, really seemed to enjoy himself, always under the watchful eye of Mom. The zoo officials have already named the little guy. He's being called Zero, named after the first polar bear born at the zoo 70 years ago. His name may be Zero, but he is a big number to his mom, and the people who have seen him so far at the zoo concur. Zero the second.
No, he's at 10.
Oh, very good.
That's all for us tonight.
And stay tuned for CBS Evening News with Dan Rather coming up a little bit later on, right after us. Actually, it's not Dan Rather tonight. It's Ed Bradley.
Ed Bradley, you're right.
Okay. Thank you for being with us, and good night.
He's looking at two kids.